Welcome to the Develop Basketball Podcast. This is Coach Chevy. Today we have Jim Flanery, head coach of Creighton Women's Basketball. Enjoy. We have Jim Flanery. He has actually had the longest lasting non-transfer rate in the country. This is going on 11 years, Flan?
Yeah, I think it's 12. 2008 was the last time we had a transfer.
Okay. That's pretty impressive. But I felt like this would be a perfect opportunity to kind of get your take on how that experience has been and how it's gotten that far. But you've obviously established a really good culture. What and who do you think influenced you the most in your philosophy?
Well, I think if I had to go back, I think when I was initially a head coach, I remember having conversations with people in the department and just talking about, you don't recognize that you don't have chemistry until that year when you don't have it, and what a big deal it can make. And I think, one of my earlier years, we had a year where we didn't have good chemistry, and I just said, well, we can't have that happen again, because we're not going to be talented enough to overcome it. I mean, we're not going to probably consistently recruit at a level where we can't, get along in the locker room. And if we don't, that's really going to show up in terms of results, but also just, the day to day. And you want to go to work and enjoy it, and you want the players you recruit to have a great experience. So I think I was blessed with having a year fairly early in my career where it was apparent that we didn't have it. And so you kind of recommit to that. And I think that was really helpful for me. And it probably helped me manage my staff better too, because I felt like that's probably where I broke down the most, was not even staff to player, it was staff to staff. And Tony DeCecco was an assistant coach with me, way back in the 90s. And he was great because I really felt like I learned a lot from him in terms of just how much the players are going through, and just, I think as a male coaching women, I think that's, we don't always, we don't always have a great pulse on what a 18 to 22-year-old female is going through. And so, but Tony was actually, because he had coached high school girls for so long.
Yeah.
And so when he got to Creighton as an assistant coach, he had 25 years of high school coaching, and you know how much drama there can be in high school girls. So I think he was really impactful for me to see him, find the kids who are struggling and help them, and not make it always about playing time. Like, hey, take your focus a little bit away from basketball and find the other things that you enjoy. And so I think, when I had, I've tried to have younger females on staff who, you were one, and but I think they help, because the older I get, the harder it is for me to connect with 18 to 20-year-olds. But I try to empower my assistant coaches, and I think they do a great job. And I think it's been helpful to watch Kirsten Bernthal Booth in volleyball, because I think Kirsten has done a phenomenal job of putting together a top 15 volleyball program. But she constantly is talking about that, and it's a good reminder for me, because because I look at her success, and you connect the two. You say, well, geez, your culture is a big part of your success, and your success obviously keeps adding your culture. So I think obviously other coaches I've worked with have been impactful, but just all the way back to when I coached with Tony, just how important it was to stay on top of kids who were struggling.
Yeah.
Because those are the kids you need to lift up. You don't need to lift up the leading scorer a lot of times, or the kid who's getting to play 32 minutes, or who's got all A's, and it's the kids who aren't, because they're, everybody's got to be on board, and you're never going to have 15 best friends. But you have to have a respect in the locker room. And I think that's been that's been, like I said, after a year early in my career where we didn't have it, it's something I recommitted to.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, and so it kind of leads me to the next question. You talked about how you guys weren't going to be talented enough to not have a good culture at the time when you had the rough year. So if you were a high school coach and you don't have control over your roster every year as much as you do at the college level, if you were in their shoes, how would you create and establish a good culture?
Yeah, well, I think a few things come to mind. First, I think you have to be honest with kids, but also open-minded because kids improve. And I think you, as a college coach, there are players who come in and you think, oh, she's not going to be good enough to help us, and then,
Yeah.
but if you keep an open mind, gosh, a year or 2 or 3 years later, they impact your program in a way that you didn't always see. And the longer I've done it, the more examples I have of that, of kids who I'm like, oh, we made a mistake. That kid's never going to be able to help us. And then, you know,
Yeah.
so I think that's impactful even for a high school coach but also give those kids an identity in terms of give the kids who maybe aren't playing as much opportunities to impact the team, whether it's in the locker room or give them some sort of leadership role, because I think that's helpful. I think a lot of times, and probably in high school even more so, kids hang on the words of their parents and the
Yes.
emotions of their parents. And so if the kid may be doing okay with her role on the team, she may say, you know what, I wish I was playing more, but I don't mind my role too much. And then he or she goes home and talks to mom and dad, and all of a sudden they think, well, I
Yes.
must be unhappy because I'm not getting to play. And again, I've seen that happen where I
Yeah.
feel like the kid's okay until mom and dad get a little bit more into his or her head. So I think it's important as a coach that you kind of stay on top of that, but just you have to obviously keep lines of communication open, and you have to use your whole staff. I think, you know, I mean, I go to high school games and sometimes there's more assistant coaches on the bench than I see. I'm like, whoa. And that's not always the case, obviously in smaller schools,
Yeah.
but just empower your assistant coaches to identify the kids who are going to be most fragile, and help lift them up, because it's a tough time when you're 15 or 16 or 17 and you know you're struggling with your esteem in a lot of areas sometimes, not obviously just
Sure.
basketball, but my kids aren't teenagers, but what am I going to do when they first have acne and they go to school and they're worried about their face breaking out? They've got all kinds of other issues. And so
Right.
just empower your assistants, but also keep lifting them up. And I think as far as you can reach down even into middle school, and get them to kind of establish what are the pillars of your program.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you need to go down to third grade or fourth grade. I know some coaches do now, but by seventh and eighth grade, if those kids can kind of start to model what it means to be a part of that program, I think that's helpful. And I always think in regard to parents, I think lines of community, there needs to be a line, but it can be a little blurry. I think sometimes coaches are like, oh, I'm never, parents are completely, I'm going to keep them completely at arm's length. And then I think sometimes, you can put your arms around parents too much. And, there needs to be a little bit of a buffer. But if a particular parent is struggling, I think it's okay to maybe cross the line and say, look, I want to have a conversation with you. But I don't know that you can do that with everybody that
Right.
you're going to have a problem with you, because at the end of the day, you can't have 15 starters and 15 leading scorers. But
Yeah.
I do think, just being honest with both kids and parents, but also, establishing, in seventh and eighth grade, what are the pillars of your program? Hard work and trust and all those things.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really good. Because like you said, I think one of the most difficult aspects of it, it seems like the parent relationship with the kid to the coach. And I think that probably is one of the more, complicated relationships to navigate, because like you said, you can't, you got to keep a line, but it can't be black and white. It's definitely
Right.
there's some gray in there. So, okay. So how do you feel like that philosophy plays into your recruiting? Like on the court, off the court, what do you look for as far as like red flags or even things that maybe make you more attracted to a kid, as far as fit and culture?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and when red flags are, that's a phrase that we use when we recruit is yellow flag, red flag. Kind of like soccer, you've got the red card and the yellow card. Maybe we should uh, try that. But and I think you need to be careful not to, to see a kid one time and maybe she had the worst day of her life and something's going on and
Yeah.
you're like you see her one time and her body language was so bad and you just say oh immediately off the list
Hmm.
um, because again they're 15 16 years old a lot of times and but absolutely you want to pay attention to how a young person interacts with his or her teammates. How do they interact with their coach? And for us in terms of if they have a parent or two parents come on campus with a visit, I want to know did they how what they don't have to be they can occasionally make a crack about their parents, but are how do they interact with their parents? Are they respectful? Because I think that's going to show you whether they're going to respect you as a coach at some point. um, so those things are important. And I've always said too, I like to see a player play when she plays quote poorly,
Hmm.
like she can't make a shot,
Yeah.
she maybe turns the ball over, she's how does she respond? Does she yell at her teammates? Does she stop wanting to be coached? you know
Yeah.
and it's okay to maybe shrug your shoulders once in a while or or lift your eyes one time. But I mean, if you're constantly, you know, showing bad body language, that's a red flag. And
Yeah.
we want, we don't care if a kid is a 4.0 student, but does she try?
Right.
It's one thing. And again, it does, she doesn't have to want to get a 4.0 or want to, but she has to want to try in the classroom. How is she, so when we talk to high school coaches or a club coach, we want to know, does she have a sincerity about the way she approaches other things besides basketball? Because
Yeah.
Creighton's not an easy school, but college is not easy. Your study habits are going to have to be a little better. And we certainly have had kids who were really college ready from a study standpoint to kids who are less. But are they willing to grow? I think is a big thing. But so yeah, and then the other part is I think competitive. One of the you're always going to talk about somebody's skill and their athleticism. Okay, do they, are they quick enough? Can they run fast enough? Can they jump high enough? Are they the shooter, the ball handler, but also what kind of a competitor is somebody and how do they demonstrate that? Because some people will say, well, you can tell she doesn't like to lose because she's how fiery she is.
Yeah.
Well, if she's fiery and the way she's demonstrating that is to yell at her teammates
Yeah.
and get upset,
Yeah.
there's there's a way that you can be with your teammates and your coaches that demonstrates competitiveness versus I'm acting out
Yeah.
and demonstrating too much. So I think there's um, because I think we can excuse that a lot of times to she's just a competitor.
Right. No.
And again, if she's 14, that's different than if she's 17, than if she's 20. The
Yeah.
younger she is, the more we were like, okay, she can grow out of that a little bit and especially if she gets around the right, the kind of teammates that can help her there. But we do draw a line in terms of if she's uncoachable, you know, she's probably going to be uncoachable for us.
I think that was really, really good. So what do you think, I mean, with that, what do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to, especially from the parents' perspective, but also players, when it comes to their performance as it relates to recruiting for you? What do you hear the most from parents or kids that when you're talking to them, like, oh, I don't really care about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think physical effort a lot of times is undervalued. Like, just keep playing hard. Like I said, I want to see somebody on a day where she doesn't have her best, because then I can see if she's going to still play really, really hard. So I had a conversation with a dad not too long ago, and I think he, wanted to talk about, I had just watched his daughter play, and he wanted to talk about, oh, the way she finished around the rim, or she wasn't strong enough with the ball, and I wanted to talk about the fact that she didn't rebound as much as I wanted her
Yeah.
to, and she didn't.
Yeah.
I felt like defensively she could be more active. I think it's, you know, in our sport, it comes down to, yeah, you have to be skilled for sure, and you can't you can't shoot 20% from the field and
Yeah.
10% from the 3-point line and make a college roster. But you have to win possessions, and that's something that I think people don't see. Can I get 2 loose ball rebounds? Do I occasionally draw a charge? Do I communicate on the floor, both when the ball is being played, but also during dead balls? What do I do there? Because again, to go back to my thing, I want to see a kid. I want to know what her base. If she's having a bad game for me, playing for me, am I still going to get 2 or 3 or 4 things out of her, or am I going to get 0?
Right. Right.
Because if I can only get 0 things out of her on that bad day, then I'm probably only going to,
Yeah.
you're not going to have your A game on offense at the college level every night out. I mean, NBA players don't have their
Right.
A game. I mean,
Right. No.
every night out, and so it's what are you going to give me every night? I think that's important. What are some things you can give us in the locker room? Are you going to be and not every kid is going to give you, it's okay to be quiet and not a total rah-rah, but are you going to suck energy out of the locker room? Are you going to take energy out of the practice court because it's routine, and I think Chev, one of the tough things is kids they start younger and they play more,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. But human nature is you're going to lose a little bit of enthusiasm. Back in Flan's day, we played so few. Like, I remember getting to go to a camp was a big deal.
Yeah.
Let alone, we never got to play summer tournaments. We had open gym in the summer, but we never got to go
Yeah.
play in the tournaments. And so you had a hunger, like you looked forward to getting into the gym because it wasn't always open.
Mm.
And you didn't always have a game waiting for you. You had to, and I played some other sports, but basketball was my favorite. And so I think one of the things is, and I know if you go to a tournament and you're playing your 4th game in 2 days, maybe you don't have to be super hyped when you step on the floor, but you can't act like it's a drag.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, that's
Yeah.
what it's going to become like in college, because you're now 3 years further down the line. You've played even more basketball over the last few years, and it's just a job. And you hear people outside say college athletics is a job, and I understand that, but I hope it's never that way at Creighton. And I don't, you hope that an 18-year-old still has a sense of excitement and curiosity about, hey, I still want to get better.
Right.
And it's a balance, because if all you do is play and play and play, you can lose a little bit of that. But you still want a kid who, appreciates the opportunity they get. And I know old school people like me say, I'd kill to have what kids nowadays have. But I also think, there probably would have been a time where I'd been like, I don't want to go to the, even though I liked basketball,
Right.
there's that, oh, I've already played 4 times this week. um, so I think just having an appreciation and being able to tell if a kid is just, you know, the slowest kid to put on their tennis shoes. Like when you get to the gym, are you the last one on the court to warm up? Are you the quickest to get your shoes off and get out of the gym? Those are things that we pay attention to.
Yeah, that's good because I just remember it was like my first or second year, and I can't remember who we were talking about. I wouldn't say their name even if I remembered, but I just know that you said something to the effect of, "Well, if she's not scoring, what does she do?" And that stuck with me because it's like, all right, well, we know scoring is always going to be somewhat like this. And so you have to do something that you have control over. We always talk about the controllables because those didn't go up and down, or they didn't have to. So kind of like you pointed out, there were players that we had that you didn't think that were going to be impactful for our team, but they just figured out a way to make those controllables really stand out. And I just remember you talking about that, and it definitely stuck with me. But so
And
go
can
ahead.
I tell one other story? And I don't know if you were a part of the team or if maybe it was the year you were injured and redshirted, but we had lost a game at Southern Illinois and played particularly poorly, and we ended up practicing there the next day before we went to Evansville.
Mhm.
And I was younger and I was probably a little more emotional. You might find that hard to believe, Chevy. But I wanted to see how our players responded to a game the night before where we not only did we not play well, but I just didn't feel like we played with enough emotion and energy. So we got to the gym the next day, and we had 2 kids get out on the court right away. They got their shoes on and they got right out to start shooting to get ready for practice. And then there was a lull, and by the time the third person got out there, and so what we did that day was, or actually it was the next day maybe, but I just said, okay, the 2 who got out right away will start against Evansville, and we're going to play a one-on-one tournament for the other 3 starters.
I remember that now.
um, because I think it's a reminder that, and I, as a coach, like we tell we're not going to make you go. If we know we're playing the next day, we're not going to make you practice 3 hours the day before if we're in between games, but we still expect you to show up ready to go. And I just, that reminder that, what I was talking about being the last one to get your shoes on and to
Yeah.
get out there and just, walking over to grab your ball and walking to a basket and just kind of enthusiasm, because that's infectious. Like if 1 or 2 people on your team take that mentality, then all of a sudden
Yes.
4 or 5 are going to do it, and then the whole team's going to do it. And it really doesn't take much for the whole team to watch 1 or 2 people do it the right way and say, okay, I can do it because look at the example I'm getting.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I think that's it's just crazy how many things for you, I mean specifically, that you've picked up that wouldn't even cross anyone's mind, to think about. Because you also used to talk about touching the lines.
Yeah.
I think it was like warm-up lines or something. There was like a kid who was adamant about touching the line every time, and it was like the rest of the team would not do it. They kind of just get close to it, but they wouldn't touch it. But yeah, it's just those big things, but things that kids don't necessarily notice or value at this point.
Right.
So okay, so moving on to kind of recruiting, if you are a high school coach. Okay, so obviously the situation is really weird with the summer. You guys had to been watching film online on your computer.
Right.
So if you're a high school coach, how would you help your kids get recruited if there isn't a high school season and if there is one?
Yeah. Well, first thing I think is you've got to, when college coaches do reach out, just be as timely as you can in terms of responding and, you know, and getting information back to them and, being a go-between between the, you know, your, your student athlete and the college coach, because I think that's, as a college coach, if a coach drags his or her feet in terms of responding to me, and I'm not saying that high school coaches don't get to go on vacation or go out on a date with their spouse or whatever, but if it takes a while to get back to me or one of our coaches, then there's a subtle hint that maybe that they're not willing to do everything they can for the person in their program, which is, again, that's just a negative. But I think just being a really good communicator, being proactive. I think talking to your student athlete about, where do you want to go? I think in this climate, like you talked about, it's a lot of recruiting is, you can have, oh, I'm going to wait to see who's interested in me.
Yes.
And then I'm going to kind of put together my plan. I think in this environment, you have to be more intentional about, okay, I've got to really decide where I want to go. But it can't necessarily all be my A list. If I have to jump down to my B list, or in terms of level of play, not that you're not going to compromise on, if distance from home is a big deal to you,
yeah,
and academics are huge to you, don't compromise on those things. Compromise by the level of basketball that you want to play, and put together a strong B list, because I think, and Chev, before you came to Creighton, you were at Midland for a year, and how good Concordia
oh my God,
is, and we,
yeah.
I had somebody tell me the other day how good Concordia, somebody who was the athletic director at Doane. I
Okay.
ran into him, found out he's trying to tell me that Concordia women are really good, and I said, well, I think I know that because we
Yeah.
played them in an exhibition and they almost beat us. So I do know that they're really good.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of kids don't understand how good the basketball is
Yes.
in this state, in the GPAC, and that there are so many good NAIA schools and Division II schools. It's not it shouldn't be just Division I or bust.
Exactly.
And so if your goal is to go to Division I, that's fine to have that in your pool of A, schools. But I think you should also entertain schools that are, quote, a level below that, because boy, the competition in and you were there for a year at Midland, the competition in that league is tremendous. And there's a lot of really good players, and you could have a great experience there, a great experience playing in that conference. Good coaches, and in that league, there's probably 5 or 6 teams in the top 15 in the country every year. So, so I think that's important to know, that it shouldn't be, or you'll have a kid think, oh, I want to go Division I, but they'll go, 16 hours from home.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of Division II schools who are really good programs recruiting them within 3 or 4 or 5 hours. And I think and then you would see a year or two later, they end up transferring back because that small Division I, 16 hours from home, really, it's not like they were drawing 6,000 people and it was a quote Division I experience in the same way that, so I think figure out your geography, figure out kind of what size of school you want to go to, but then, really give, give credit to the programs around our area that are that are really good and can give you a great experience in this sport. And if you've got your dream school, that's fine, but don't be stubborn about waiting forever when you've got other opportunities.
Yes, you hit it on the head, I think, because it's so easy to get caught up on the level. I think social media has a little to do with that. I think
Yeah.
it's fancier to post that you're going to a D1 school. But at the end of the day, you gotta worry about what your day-to-day is going to look like. So your non-negotiables that you mentioned of education, location, did you have one more?
Size of school, I think,
Yeah.
if you're intimidated by something that's too big, or you're turned off because something's a little too small,
Mm-hmm.
I think there are plenty of avenues to
Yeah.
pick a little bit larger school, even if it's a non-Division I school. Or there's plenty of schools that have
Right.
enrollments a little bit larger.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's excellent advice.
And
So
even like you said, the educational part, I'll have people email me, recruits email me, and and they want to major in engineering or something that we don't even have. And it's like, so do and I understand that a lot of 16 and 17-year-olds don't know what they want to study. But if you do have a specific, like if from the time you were 10, you wanted to follow in your mom or your dad's footsteps, and you're committed to an academic track, go to a school that's got that as a major, or a strength even, not just a major, but maybe it's like, not only do they have that as a major, but that's one of their strengths. Because you can have a great experience, as Shav, the people that you play college basketball with they become like lifelong friends.
yeah.
And it doesn't matter what level you play. If you're in the locker room and you're trying to win a conference championship with those kids, with those teammates, that's going to be a better experience than if you go somewhere and you're not good enough to play and you're miserable and you're in the other areas.
Yes.
Now, you may go somewhere and you like the academics and you like some of the stuff, but if you're miserable in the other areas just so you can say, yeah, but I was a Division I basketball player,
Yeah.
You're going to look back and regret it.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
And on top of that, you know how it is. I mean, with women's basketball, how many of them want to actually play in the WNBA? It's like night and day from men. Everybody on the men's side is trying to play in the league or professionally. Where a lot more women are going to go whatever profession they went to school for. So education becomes an even more important part of your decision. So yeah, I think that's great.
Right.
Okay. All right. So now that you've had a whole summer under your belt of recruiting on the computer screen, how has that been for you, and how has it impacted the recruiting?
Well, it's made me better technologically. I know you would you would doubt that, but it's forced me to have to be better on the computer. The first tournament or a couple, I actually liked it because I could click around and watch more games, and the travel and recruiting can be kind of difficult. But then it got old. But I do think there's a blueprint. Like if I was the one making the rules, I'd say, let's do maybe 30 to 40% virtual. And then, maybe 60 or 70% live, because, you need to go out and watch recruits live. You need to see how quick they are and how they see the floor, and some of the things we talked about earlier, the body language and how are they communicating with their teammates and coaches, that you can't always see sitting on a computer screen. But I do think in terms of like narrowing down your pool and maybe identifying some things that you weren't, because how as a college coach, sometimes you go watch one game, then you get in your car and you go watch another game, and you you don't maybe see as many people. So I do think there's a value to maybe doing some virtual recruiting in the future, but it is more difficult to kind of hone in on the specifics of some of the things that we've already talked about, but even just kind of overall athleticism and length and okay, she looks kind of long, but I can't really tell. And
Right.
um, but you know, uh, and not having kids on campus has been hard, I think, because kids want to visit and they want to, experience what being on a campus is like and be around your players. And I don't know what that's going to look like even in the fall, if we're going to be able to get recruits on campus, or if it's going to be, and maybe we get them on campus, but it's still not going to be quite the same because we'll have a lot of restrictions where they won't be able to do, they'll be able to do A, B, and C, but they won't be able to do D, E, and F that we've been able to do in the past. And so, but I think on the other hand, because of that, recruits have been probably more proactive reaching out to us because they understand that it's been a little, they're rightfully worried that maybe, things aren't going to break the way they want them to break because we didn't get to see them in a normal context. And I guess I would just counsel them by saying, we're still going to have to make tough decisions, and maybe our process will be delayed a little because we have to all get together as a staff and say, well, I watched so and so 3 times and this is what I saw. And so I think decisions coming from coaches might be a little slower, but we're still recruiting the same pool of prospective student athletes. So it's not like at some point we're not going to say, okay, this was our group of A kids. We're going to keep moving, and that's going to happen everywhere. Division I, the highest level of Division I are going to lose out on kids. They're going to move to the next kids, and then that domino effect. Division II coaches are going to miss out on some kids, and they're going to come to you. And NAI coaches are going to miss out on a kid maybe that they were recruiting, and they're going to come to you. So I do think if I were to give counsel, I'd just say be patient, stay proactive in terms of your communication, but we're still going to have the same number of scholarships unless COVID really starts to take away our money. But I think it's just going to take coaching staffs a little longer to put together their plan. And I always tell kids too, don't panic. I mean, there's going to be people who are comfortable and make a decision really early, and don't think that just because they made a decision early or they got an offer early that you need to panic and make a decision. Just kind of stick to what your plan was, and I'll just call you out. But Chevy, we didn't offer you a scholarship until it's a different time. I know because people don't know how old you are. I'm not going to tell them how old you are, but we didn't offer you until probably September of your senior year in high school, right? So I mean, it was the fall, and everybody said you're too small. That was the knock on you, was you were too small. But I mean, but I can tell you, we've had a lot of players who've been really good players in our program who were offered very late, and I think back to a time way back where I think we had a really big class. We offered we had 4 kids early and 3 late, but the 3 that we offered late all started. And I think maybe only one of the 4 that we offered early ended up starting. So
that is crazy.
I think, be patient. I know that's hard. I know it's hard for kids to be patient and parents to be patient because they're looking around and they're seeing that so-and-so got an offer and so-and-so did this, but you'll eventually land where, somewhere probably where you should land from a basketball standpoint, but make sure that all those other bricks are in place because those are important too.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. So do you feel like some of the programs are speeding up from a standpoint of the kids that they know that are good enough to play at their level? COVID happens and more offers are starting to come out for those the obvious kids, I would say. Do you feel like that's the case or no?
I think if you're talking about like juniors to be, I think um, I feel you feel bad for a lot of the people who didn't get to play, but I think those offers are coming out now, but I think they were maybe just a little bit delayed, and um, it also it depends on your class. I mean, we're in a unique situation because we signed a really big class. Our freshman class coming in this year will be on campus this fall is a big class, so we didn't really need
Yeah.
a very big class in 2021. So we haven't had to necessarily panic the way I feel like maybe some schools have had to panic because they're trying to sign 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 kids. And um, so I'm probably a little bit out of the loop because we haven't really been made to be in that position. Our issue will be, did we really get enough evaluation for those juniors to be, that class of 2022 where, but I guess so from our standpoint, we're probably still trying to figure that out because there are, and then the other part of that is you have to kind of decide whether you're going to be able to get kids on campus. So it doesn't, you're trying to navigate, does it make sense to throw out a bunch of offers at this point if kids aren't really going to be able to get on campus over the next few months? Maybe it's not till after Christmas where we're going to start getting more intense with visits. So should we wait through, Thanksgiving or Christmas before we decide to start making offers, because we're not going to get those kids on campus to commit anyway. So
Right.
I think with the junior class, the 2022 class, I think I think you'd be better off being patient, because I think coaches don't really know whether they're going to be able to give you a really valuable, meaningful visit this fall. So they're probably dragging their feet and making sure that they get um, get their offers in order, get their priorities in order.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Because your class size is obviously a huge factor in how you're going to recruit this summer. So if you got 4 or 5 slots open, you're probably, throwing out a few more scholarships than
Right.
if you 2 or 1. So okay, that's really good.
Yeah, I think we'd have panicked a lot differently. Not panicked, but just we'd have had to make more decisions, more quick trigger decisions.
Right.
In the last month or so, had we not really needed a very big 2021 class.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So final question, Flan.
Okay.
So there was a guy who posted a question kind of like this. So for players, obviously, who are going to be really dependent on this season to get noticed, to start their recruitment process, maybe with a few schools that they would be interested in, what do you think is a realistic alternative if there is no high school season? Opposed to just AAU, like I know that's an option, but have you ever thought about that, or has that crossed your mind all this?
Well, I think a couple things would come to mind, and that's in terms of just, I mean, first of all, keep working on your game, because the thing is, none of us know what the high school season is going to look like. Things have changed so much even in the last couple of weeks with OPS going to virtual learning, and who knows about football. But just so keep working on your game, because at the point where you get to play in front of coaches, you want to be ready. So I mean, it's okay to worry and want to get to perform, but if your game has a lot of rust at the point where you come out of where we come out and you're able to be seen, that's going to be impactful. But I think that's where what I said earlier about really narrowing down like what where can you see yourself playing,
Mm-hmm.
and then being proactive. And I mean, yes, film is important in terms of sending film to those schools where you really could see yourself. And where have I visited? If I'm a senior and I'm looking to play somewhere in a year, where have I visited that I'm comfortable? And I don't want to say bombard them with information, but
Yeah.
what statistics can you send them? Not just film, but
Right.
um, and endorsements and those sorts of things from coaches. But I think, because I've had conversations with some people, who are worried about getting the offer that they want. And I just said, at some point we're all going to have to move on to that next kid. And,
Yeah.
so all you can do is kind of control the controllables,
Yeah.
keep working on your game. But I also think just shrinking your list, because, but if somebody calls,
Yeah.
obviously that's going to be impactful. But I don't know. I mean, you know, uh, something that you're doing, post an individual workout. Is that something that coaches would eventually want to look at, because I can't see somebody
Yeah.
in a game, but if I see them in a, 25-minute video, and how hard they can work um, in an individual workout or a small group workout, I think that could be impactful to a college coach. Especially, it's tough because there is such a thing as over promotion. Like, if you're a coach, and as a college coach, that some emails start off, and boy, 2 sentences in, you're like, okay, this is a little bit too much over promotion. But there's nothing wrong with selling. We want to be sold um, without being lied to.
Yeah.
So we're always going to kind of um, try to mesh, numbers with video.
Yeah.
Because if it's okay, maybe we saw a kid play this summer and she wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
But if she averaged 18 points and 6 rebounds and whatever, and you can put together a statistical thing, and then you can come up with an individual workout and send it in, that could be impactful. But I think, because like you said, it is a different time, and we don't know what this winter is going to bring.
Mm-hmm.
But I think keep working on your game, narrow the focus of the schools that you're most interested in,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe just be creative either with a statistical package you can put together, or an individual or a small group workout. Those are things that I think could be helpful.